Good afternoon. You are here with Professor Al-Deen in Critical Talk, and I have the esteemed honor of having as my guest tonight Dr. Lamont Hill. Dr. Lamont Hill is one of the leading intellectual voices in our country. He is currently the host of BET News, and he was a political contributor for CNN. He's an award winning journalist, and you can look him up on Huffington Post. And he's received numerous prestigious awards and has been named one of America's 100 most influential Black leaders. I would say leaders, but Black leaders too, by Ebony Magazine. Dr. Hill is the Stephen Charles Professor of Media City and Solutions at Temple University in Philadelphia, PA. Prior to that, he held positions at Columbia University and Morehouse College. He's trained as an anthropologist of education, and he holds a PhD with distinction from the University of Pennsylvania. His research focuses on the intersections between culture, politics, and education in the United States and the Middle East. And I want to say, good evening. Take your mute off. Mute, mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. And I haven't seen you in a minute, but you're always up to something. One of the things I would like to do tonight, which is a little different uh, than the show usually runs, we usually launch into an interview, but this was so powerful that I'm going to ask my producer to put on a short video, which I'm going to let frame our conversation this evening. Thank you.
So we rebel so you can feel our pain. We rebel so you can understand that enough is enough. We tried sitting in. We tried chanting. We tried singing. We tried rapping. We tried hashtags. We ran marathons so you listen to us. And you don't listen until you feel some of this pain. On Monday, May 25th, George Floyd was killed by Minneapolis police. He was unarmed and he wasn't resisting arrest. Ever since that moment, the city has been up in arms. There have been protests that have gotten more and more intense over the days. The most recent protests have been so intense that a Target caught on fire, that things were destroyed, and the media and citizens are saying, why are these people rioting? Well, I'm going to tell you why. First of all, these are not riots. Riots are irrational, they're random, they're just brutal acts of violence with no rhyme or reason, with no purpose. These are rebellions. Rebellions are organized acts of resistance against an unjust system. What's happening in Minneapolis is no different than what happened in Detroit in 1967, what happened in LA in 1992, what happened in Ferguson in 2014. What's happening is people who have finally said, we have had enough and we are going to do something about it. People say, well, why now? Because we're tired. Black death happens every day. If Black folk rebelled every time something happened that should not happen, we'd be rebelling all day. But we don't do that. But there comes a point where you've had enough. Right now, we're at a moment where we can't turn on the television, we can't go to social media without seeing somebody who looks like us put down like a dog, killed by the state, killed by random white citizens, just because we're committing the crime of being Black and outside. We're tired of it. We're tired of being one phone call away from a disgruntled white woman with an unleashed dog from being sent to a lynching. We're tired. We're tired. And the problem is, y'all don't listen until we do something. Martin Luther King said, the riot is the language of the unheard. Well, these rebellions are the language of the unheard. This system does not listen to Black death. Black death is ordinary. Black death is common. No other race is on the news or on social media getting killed day after day after day without any warning. Only Black folk. So the reason why we have to do this is to get the nation's attention. And how do you get the nation's attention? By damaging their property and by making them feel as unsafe as we feel every single day. Now, that's not to say we should go around killing people. That's not to say we should just burn stuff up just to burn it down. But every once in a while, we have to make our voices heard. We have to make our pain known. And sometimes that means stopping a cog in the wheel of capitalism. Sometimes that means shutting down a Target. Sometimes that means stopping the status quo. And people say, oh my God, they're looting, they're stealing. That's the same outrage we feel by exploitative business. That's the same outrage we feel when a government is willing to open up the country as soon as they realize there's only Black folk dying. The same unsafety and vulnerability that y'all are feeling right now, we feel every day. So we rebel so you can feel our pain. We rebel so you can understand that enough is enough. We tried sitting in. We tried chanting. We tried singing. We tried rapping. We tried hashtag. We ran marathons so you'd listen to us. And you don't listen until you feel some of this pain. People are saying, well, you're destroying your own neighborhoods. Look how irrational these people are. Again, stop framing Black people as irrational. We're not destroying our own neighborhoods. That Target might be in the hood, but we don't own it. Those businesses might be in our neighborhoods, but we don't have a financial stake in them. The truth is, our neighborhoods have been occupied and colonized since we've been here. So when we are pushing back and burning stuff down, and when we are destroying things, it's not because we don't have a plan. It's because y'all haven't listened to plan A or plan B or plan C or plan D. So by the time we get to this stage, this is all we have left. So if you want there not to be rebellions, if you don't want to see these cities on fire, then listen to us when we tell you we're in pain. Listen to us when we tell you we're vulnerable. Listen to us when we tell you we're unsafe. Listen to us when we tell you, America, you got to do something different, because if you don't, everybody's going to experience what it's like to be in America.
See how powerful that was? I don't know if you were even looking at yourself, but I am, and I want to hold this book up, and I'm hoping, let me see, which way do I have to go, that my producer guesses. This was written a few short years ago, but it is important because it begins a narrative that the video we just watched furthers down the line. And nobody was he starts off with the invisible man, and he walks us through vulnerability and a special kind of condition that African Americans find themselves in. So I'm going to shut up and let you tell everybody about the book.
Oh, well, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's always an honor to be in your presence. As a Black scholar, you are one of the kind
you don't have to be nice to me. Just go ahead with the book.
I know, but I got to. My mama raised me right. But seriously, as a Black scholar, we all owe a debt to you, and your work was path-breaking and courageous. And even those of us who don't do work on African American Islam in particular, still learn from you how to navigate the academy, how to be a stellar scholar who can take their own path and reject those people and those ideas that undermine our humanity, undermine our intelligence, that undermine our ability to see Black people as full human beings. I mean, you told our story, and you gave me courage, and so many of us courage to do the same thing. Thank you. The book, Nobody, I wrote Nobody sort of unexpectedly. It was at my house. I was here in Philadelphia, and I was watching the news, and then I was looking on social media, and I saw that this boy had been killed in some town I had never heard of in Missouri, right outside of St. Louis. And Ferguson. I was like, I didn't know what Ferguson was. This is 2014. Ain't nobody know what Ferguson was. And so outside of that area, so and I noticed on social media that he had been killed by a police officer, but his body was still out there, and activists kept tweeting
in the street.
In the street, right on Canfield, on the street. It blew my mind, and something was different about this story. 2 days later, BET said, or the next day, BET sent me out there to as a journalist to cover the story of Mike Brown and this boy who'd been killed. And when I got down there, I saw some things that shook me. First of all, you could almost still smell death in the air. There were still stains of blood on the ground. People were still emotionally shaken. In a lot of ways, it was like the lynchings of the 20th century. in the end of the 19th century, where the death wasn't just about destroying that body. It was about sin. It was about the spectacle of death.
Yes.
And what that meant for everybody watching it.
Right.
So I sat there and looked at that thing. And I remember standing out there, and this black girl said to me, she said, well, she looked at the space where Mike had been. As you said, he was out there for 4.5 hours.
Yes.
For half of that time, there was not even a sheet to cover his body.
Right.
No medical establishment, no nothing. And somebody said they left him out there like he ain't belong to nobody.
Exactly.
And that shook me to my soul, because it was like there's a way that we treated that body like there was no parent who loved him, no family who cared about him. There was no state to protect him. There was no medical establishment to tend to him. And even before he got on the ground, there was no school system to invest in him. There was no police force to not harass him and to protect him. And as we went down the list, I said, what does it mean for Mike Brown not just to get killed on Canfield Drive by a white police officer after getting stopped for jaywalking?
Yeah.
But what does it mean for an entire system to render you unworthy of what we think you get in a society like this? So I said, I'm gonna tell the whole story of Mike Brown. And that's all I wanted to do. And as I was watching and writing the story of Mike Brown, I heard about Tamir Rice. I heard about Eric Garner. We watched Freddie Gray die. We watched Sandra Bland die, And before I knew it, I was like, I can't tell a story about Ferguson. I got to tell a story from Ferguson. Right. And it's funny because initially it was going to be Ferguson to Baltimore. But then I looked and said, wait a minute, but what about Flint? State violence ain't just about police shooting us. It's about that lead that's in the water.
Right.
It's about where they dump nuclear waste. It's about, all these other things. And so I decided to tell a story that showed what it means to be rendered nobody in America, what it meant to be looked at as someone who doesn't deserve the spoils of democratic citizenship, what it means to be somebody who doesn't deserve investment and protection and safety, and what it means finally to live in a world where the government has privatized our concerns. The government's supposed to protect us. And even if you're hardcore conservative, there's certain things the government's supposed to do for us. And what does it mean for us to move into that neoliberal moment where all that stuff gets privatized and profitized? And then the industries and the spaces that were given responsibility of us do what they're supposed to do. They're making money. They're being efficient. They're being privatized. And so if you have the water no longer managed by the government, but managed by a private agency, and the private agency doesn't care about the people with lead in the water, then you end up with people who die. And so throughout the book, I'm looking at what it means
before you go on, because us in the academy speak a particular vocabulary.
Yes.
So I want to back us up. And what is neoliberalism? What do we mean when we say something comes from the government as opposed to being privatized? Because I don't think many of us really understand what's at stake in those notions.
I think that's a great question. When we say neoliberalism, we're referring to the liberalization of the market. In other words, we're saying that the way that it's free market fundamentalism. It's the belief that the market, that money, that economics should drive all of our social decision making. That means, for example, that the way to fix schools is not to invest more money in public schools, but it's to take the public good and make it private. Let's make competition. Let's give out vouchers. Let's have school choice, which really means a move toward privatization.
You mean to tell me that? No, I kind of know, but I'm not sure I know anymore. That parents, especially Black and brown parents, ran to get those vouchers, not knowing that they were being complicit in another scheme that was going to be to their detriment. Yeah. This is ticking me off here.
It's a fact. You right on the money, and unfortunately, they always frame it in a way that makes you feel. Conservatives have a way of framing things so that it sounds like it's something you want when it's something that you don't want. Like
exactly.
War on drugs. The war ain't against the drugs. It's against poor Black people that were using drugs or the victims of the drug war. The war on terror. Except the war ain't on terror. It's a war on our civil liberties. And when you have this this idea of school choice. Yeah, we get to choose, but what are we choosing? And what are the stakes? And so we have decided as a country that the private is better than the public. And part of how they do that, anything public, they make it sound like it's for black folk, because they know if it's for black folk, ain't nobody gonna want it. So they public housing. Even though when we think of public housing, we don't think of them subsidies in the suburbs. We think about Taylor Homes, Cabrini Green. We think about Richard Allen in Philadelphia. When we say public education, we don't think about the rural schools or the suburban schools, which are public. We think about, those schools inside of an urban school district that are black and brown. When we say public options in healthcare, people think, oh my God, there's suddenly all these people we're going to be so many black and brown people added to the hospital. And so they make public assistance, right? Even though most people on welfare are white, female, and young, they make you think that you're not giving money to Tiffany or Becky, you're giving it to Taquanda or Talisha. And so they make you vote against something that's for the public because they make you think it's black. And so then the private interest becomes the way we deal with everything. And as I talk about in the book, it's not just school, it's the police departments, it's the military, it's the public defender's office. We privatize everything. And when you do that, when you make everything private, when you talk about efficiency, saving money, cost cutting, when you talk about austerity, the government's going to spend less money and be more disciplined fiscally, a lot of times what it means is we're not going to invest in the vulnerable. We're going to take away the safety net, but we ain't taking it away for everybody, because we just saw $500 billion go to Wall Street and corporations after COVID-19 happened. We keep, through the CARES Act, we keep watching the rich get socialism and the poor get free market capitalism, and it's not fair.
Wow. I think, and the other thing is the lingo, because if you talk in the terms of neoliberalism, this and that and the other, what happens is the average one of us glazes over. We don't have a clue as to what that means. Not only did a whole bunch of money, almost half of it, the money allotted, go to corporations, I just found out that a huge sum of money went to evangelical churches. And when I turned to ask folk, did Massaget get any of that money? Everybody's looking at me. Well, did they have the right paper? I said, now you're going to ask questions of yourself that none were asked of those groups that got $1 million apiece.
Exactly.
Why are you doing this to yourself when you should have gotten some of that bill? You had to close down Massaget. You had staff. You had security people. You still had bills. So why didn't you put well? And I'm wondering. I realize some, and we're going to keep talking about what it's done to us, but I'm getting real tired of us shooting our own selves in the foot when we could at least shoot alongside the body instead of in the darn foot.
I know that's right. We definitely got to organize and struggle better, but they're making it hard for us, man. It's an uphill battle.
It is. Nobody starts out with those names that rose up. But many in our audience have never read The Invisible Man. And the fact that nobody extends a narrative, and you talk in there about what they did to the Invisible Man. The Invisible Man is on everybody's list. And then what do they do to it? It becomes the Black book, not a classic, but the Black classic. Right. So you keep diminishing and diminishing and diminishing. And here at Muslim Network TV, we're going to re-up both books, Invisible Man and Nobody, to put on our reading list so that people can get a sense of a continuing narrative for some immigrants who have never been exposed to any of this. They had some of those questions. Why are they rioting? They just looting their body. And then you come back in that video, which is why I was intent on playing. Look, the store is in my community, but I don't own the damn store.
Right.
Back up. I'm not burning my own.
Right.
because I don't own it.
Right.
It was there and somebody else is making money out for me. Because when we got to George Floyd up in Minneapolis, one of the heartbreaking but very telling scenarios was that the man who owned the store was Palestinian Muslim. And he's got protocols in that store making black folks live up to him along with family members that say when they do this, you do that. And all of the you do that involve calling the police. And this time, when he called the police, something eye opening and exceptionally, again, tragic happened. But also in Nobody, I want you to comment on that. You talk about the cell phone becoming a social arbiter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, both of those things, could you say something about?
Yeah, I'll start with the cell phone thing first. You know, we live in a world where there's just more room and access or space for everyday citizens to do what I call in another project, engage in new surveillances. In other words, the state's been surveilling us forever.
Yep.
I mean, they've been from flesh branding to slave catchers. They've been following us,
Yep.
looking at us, trying to keep track of us forever as Black folk in America. But what cell phone technology has allowed, and almost everybody in America has a cell phone now. Where its penetration rate somewhere in the 90s, and smartphones are in the 80s. And for younger folk, people younger than me, I think 18 to 25, it's in like it's around 90% or 85 to 90%. So people have these phones, they have this technology now, and through cell phones, through social media, through live streaming, people are able to take photos of police. They're able to videotape police misconduct. They're able to hold the state accountable in a way that we simply could not before. It was a rare occurrence. It was almost it was like hitting the lottery to be able to catch the officers that beat Rodney King in 1991 on videotape, right? People weren't just walking around with big video cameras.
Yeah.
But now we can catch this stuff more often. And the importance of that is that it helps keep the state accountable. It allows, it takes away white people's ability to say, we just didn't know. Right.
Yeah.
And it also, I think, creates a more complicated conversation about Black witness, what it means for Black folk to say, look, we've been telling this story forever, and now we got evidence. It ain't foolproof, but it does matter that we can tell those stories about ourselves on a day-to-day basis, that we can narrate our own stories, our own violence. I remember being on the streets of Ferguson, and all the corporate media outlets were saying that the police were holding their ground and telling us to go home, but we're not engaging in any violence. We were getting tear gassed while the media was reporting that. and if you've been tear gassed, you know what tear gas is. You don't think it for nothing else. So while the media is saying, corporate media is saying, oh, you know, everything's fine, we're saying we're getting tear gassed. 20 years ago, the corporate media story would have been the only story. Now, we got Twitter, we got live stream on Facebook, you know, we're Facebook Live, and we're doing all this stuff showing, look at us on the ground right now. We are dying here. And so that cell phone technology is important because it doesn't change necessarily the hearts and minds of these folk, but what it can also do is change the response. Ahmaud Arbery was killed and nobody did anything until the videotape came out. They already had the videotape, so it wasn't like they didn't know. They didn't arrest those people because they had a video, because they saw the videotape. They arrested those people because we saw the videotape. So that's also a key part of it. As far as the other thing goes, you know, as someone who does solidarity work with Palestinian communities, both here and in Palestine, it was very interesting for me to see what it meant for George Floyd, his death sequence to begin with a phone call from a store owned by a brown person. You know, part of what solidarity means is we have to think about, and that's why I have the solidarity as a verb shirt on. You know, solidarity is not just an idea, it's an action and it's a practice. And part of what we have to do is understand what it means to be Black in America, and that calling the police on a Black person is not the same as calling the police on a white person.
Yeah.
Right.
We have to go to a break here. This is Critical Talk with Dr. Mark Lamont Hill. We're going to take a few.
What was it like when you started this network out, when you started Sound Vision those many years ago?
After 9/11, one lady called me and she says, what is your channel which I can watch? And I say, I'm sorry, we don't have a channel. And you know what she said? She said, then how America will know about you?
SubhanAllah. Anything you want to say to the people who are watching? That we had one sister who messaged that she grew up on Sound Vision. What do you say to the people who have been long supporters?
Thank you. Thank you. It is because of you we are able to do all of that. So the generation of Adam's World, you need to take it over for the next generation. And that's my invitation to you. So keep telling everybody where to watch. They can watch it on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, or easy thing, muslimnetwork.tv, or our YouTube channel, or our Facebook channel. And with your help, inshallah, ladies, the one who called me, what channel should I watch Muslims on? Answer is here and now.
Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
It'll give you a chance to at least look at your bottle of water. Take your mic.
Exactly.
No, you can. This is a casual show, and we made it that way because we know we're coming late, and people sometimes, they just, if I could have a cup of coffee, I'd have one right now.
Right.
I want to go back. What do I want? I got so many things to go back to. Let me take a swing away, and then I'm going to take a swing back.
Okay.
My husband and I had the honor of coming to, I don't remember if it was the second or the third Malcolm X Day. And I had the enormous opportunity to visit Uncle Bobby's. Could you just tell us a little bit about Uncle Bobby's, what is happening? I saw online there had to get posted, it's closed temporarily, but I want to know what's happening with Uncle Bobby and how that idea got started.
Okay. Can I go now?
Go.
Okay. So, Uncle Bobby's for me was the brainchild, or it was like a lifelong goal. I grew up in Philadelphia. My father and his family is from Wilkes County, Georgia. My father was born in 1928. His brother, my Uncle Bobby, was born in 1917. They grew up in a Jim Crow South. They were second-class citizens. They went off to the Army because it was the only access they had to any kind of chance to get social mobility. After they left the military, Uncle Bobby actually was in World War II and then came to Philadelphia. My father followed him. We eventually all made it to DC in Philadelphia. When they got there, Uncle Bobby, he couldn't figure out why, or he was troubled by the fact that he had fought and nearly died fighting for America around the world, and came back home and had to ride behind Nazi POWs on the train ride back home. His money was still counterfeit, still couldn't buy a hamburger, still couldn't sit at a Horn and Hardart, still couldn't have his picture taken. My dad's class, 11th grade class, couldn't have his picture taken in front of Washington Monument, but dogs could. You know, it was this kind of reality of an American apartheid system that they couldn't make sense of. And so Uncle Bobby said, well, I need to figure this thing out. Now, Uncle Bobby hadn't, you know, in Georgia back then, high school only went to 11th grade. They didn't have a 12th grade. So Uncle Bobby went right to work with his 11th grade education. My dad eventually went away to college, but Uncle Bobby kept reading. And he read more than my dad read. Uncle Bobby read everything. And he read books, he read magazines, he read everything. And he loved to talk about this stuff. So when my dad would bring me to my Uncle Bobby and Bessie's house in North Philadelphia, literally right across the street from where my office at Temple University is right now, he would have books for me. He would have the copies of Ebony, Jet, Black Enterprise laid out on the table.
I love it.
It was like the blackest, you know, all the furniture was covered in plastic. It was a black household. We ain't never touched the real furniture. But he gave me my first copy of E. Franklin Frazier's Black Bourgeoisie. He gave me the autobiography of Malcolm X. He presented me with a bunch of books, but also conversation on race. And it was Uncle Bobby's house that got me going to then black bookstores like Hakim's, owned by Daoud Hakim, who was both in Atlanta and Philadelphia and part of the West End community with Imam Jamil. There was, you know, I started reading Ansar Allah books. I started reading Message to the Black Man, Nation of Islam books. I started reading the radical conspiracy theory stuff. I started reading anything I could find. And books became my way of figuring out who I was and trying to get free. And so I said that if I ever had the chance to open a bookstore, if I ever had a chance to create that space for somebody else, I would do it. And so when I got a little bit of money, I said, the first thing I'm going to do is open a bookstore. And what else could I call it but Uncle Bobby? Exactly. And so that's what we do at Uncle Bobby's. We have books, we have conversations, we have community events. We're deeply rooted in Black writers, Black arts, Black radical traditions. And we're an inclusive community, we're a diverse community, but at the core, the point of the store is to create a space for these kinds of ideas.
I like the place, and I like that it's almost in a little square with another building, if I'm not mistaken, that you all took over.
Yeah.
We had, could you just a word or two?
Yeah, we have something called the People's Sanctuary. And the People's Sanctuary is an event space, formerly a church. Now it's an event space that we use to have big book events, big conversations. We of course, you came for and blessed us at the Malcolm X symposium. Every year we do a Malcolm X symposium. We also do a Malcolm X radical symposium. And what we're trying to do is keep track of the radical tradition and to not let Malcolm or Martin or Angela or June Jordan or Audre Lorde or Ida B. Wells Barnett become less radical or less central to our freedom struggle than they were. We want to keep the tradition going by telling the truth about these folk.
Well, I think it's just awesome, and it ought to get replicated everywhere. And I just can't say enough. I was so shocked to see it in person, and this steady stream of people of all walks in and out, you know, and then just meet some old friends, some new friends at the conference, which I'm going to ask you about later. But I want to turn a corner. As usual, and should have been expected by us, those in power begin their program of usurpation of what has happened. How do you, as a public intellectual, interrogate that and begin to give or provide or collaborate or whatever it is for us to stop the Black Lives Matter?
I think the first thing we have to do is analyze, honor, and spotlight the roots of Black Lives Matter. There's no Black Lives Matter without the Black radical tradition. Black Lives Matter is not a liberal bourgeois multicultural movement, right? It's a movement rooted in a Black radical imagination. Black Lives Matter is a commitment to affirming the humanity of all Black people, which itself is a radical act in a world that doesn't see us as full human beings, even now. But it's also about understanding the various ways that Black people are vulnerable to state violence, to structural violence, etc. So it's not just about police killing us, it's about this broader thing. So we can never lose sight of that. We also can't lose sight of the Black feminist roots of Black Lives Matter. There's no, Black feminists and Black women more broadly have always kept us together and had the most ambitious freedom dreams. Black women didn't just dream to be free. They didn't just dream to be like white women. They dreamed to create a world of international solidarity, a world that dismantled capitalism, a world that dismantled patriarchy, but that also dismantled the systems that allow racism and patriarchy and other things to thrive. So for me, we got to hold on to that tradition. Otherwise, Black Lives Matter will always be able to be usurped, as you said, by some liberal movement, by some Democratic Party movement. We have to be something bigger than that. And smarter than that, I think. Another thing we have to do is be clear about our demands. Once we know the tradition we come out of, we have to be clear about what we're asking for. In the streets of Minneapolis and Philadelphia and New York, we've been calling for defunding the police. That's rooted in the work of Angela Davis and Ruth Gilmore and others who are calling to abolish police and prisons. We can't allow that to turn into a call for cops that dance with us in the street, or more body cameras, or warmer and fuzzier prison cells. We have to keep in mind the radical imagination that says that we can have a world without police and prison and punishment as the primary way of navigating the world. We can do that, but we have to hold on to that stuff, and we have to resist these folk who are trying to take over the movement. These folk who will sell you out in a minute. These folk who just want to make money off books. These folk who just want to get a political office. These people who just want to make it to the award shows. These people who just want to become celebrities. We can't allow them to become the leaders of this movement. What makes BLM powerful is that it was started by Black women, that it was organized and expanded in the grassroots level, and that it maintained a radical commitment and an internationalist politics. For me, if we stay true to that, we'll be okay. If not, we're going to have some problems.
Well, but wait a minute. Let me not get to my next question before I get to my prior question. I have heard many a time that I don't think people really understand what systemic racism is, what institutionalized racism is comprised of. I was in a conversation the other day, and I found myself trying to explain that everything you say about Black people, it could be true, could be uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean you're anti-Black. In the same way, I can say something about Jewish people, white people, Christians, and it be true, but it's not anti-Christian, it's not anti-Semitic, it's not any of those big blanket things that you wish to throw over and shut me down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When we say systemic racism, many can't see it. We feel it and live it. As you said in the video, if we got upset about all the microaggressions and everything else, we'd be freaked out and last about 5 minutes.
Right. We do nothing but rebel. It'd be riots everywhere.
All day long. Our fuses would burn quick. So explain what we mean when we're talking about institutionalized racism, systemic racism.
Yeah. I like the way Ruth Gilmore talks about it a bit. I would expand on it, but scholar Ruth Gilmore talks about this idea of a way of organizing the world in a way that having a certain identity makes you vulnerable to premature death.
Oh,
right?
At home.
Right?
Yeah.
In your soul, right? So for me, the fact that systemic racism, the evidence of systemic racism is the fact that me being Black means I'm less likely to live. I'm more likely to die. I'm more likely to die because I am racialized as Black in this country. We die more at birth. We don't live as long. Black women die more involved in childbirth, 3 times their white counterparts. In terms of prosperity measures, we work harder for less money. We pay more in interest rates, insurance. We pay higher rent. We're more likely to get arrested, charged, convicted. We get longer sentences. We're more likely to be executed by the state. We're more likely to have food insecurity. We're less likely to have stable housing. We're more likely we get lower salaries. Even if we graduate from Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, then we get different salaries than our white counterparts. A white man with a felony conviction has a better chance of getting a job callback than a Black man without one. I mean, any measure of what it means to be happy and prosperous in this country we at the bottom. Any measure of social misery, we at the top. And so for me, systemic racism, it means that just by virtue of having this identity, there are systems in place that make me more vulnerable to premature death that are outside the sphere of my immediate control. Meaning it's not just that I can make a better choice. I can't choose my way out of this system, right? I can't behave my way out of it. I can't dress my way out of it. I can't talk my way out of it. I can't speak better English so that I don't die. That there are things that even if I act my best, even if I behave my best, even if I show out, that I'm still vulnerable to premature death. And that is what systemic racism is all about.
Why? Is it because we're still perceived as property run amok?
I think so. And I think the reason why we're still perceived that way is because we live in a system, in a country that is built on racial capitalism. And so, you know, American capitalism, it's important to think about racism as an outgrowth of capitalism. And that is to say that a lot of times people think that that racism comes from we create this thing called racism and then we got race. No, the first thing we did was create racial categories. We decided that we were going to organize, not us, the invention of race by Europeans allowed for racialized and racist systems to exist, right? Race itself is the problem. The construction of race itself is a problem. Why is race so important to America, though? Because if I'm trying to if capitalism is looking to exploit labor, if it is looking to extract value from human labor, human bodies, human existence, if we're trying to have a small sector of people who economically dominate the rest of us, then race becomes an important category for capitalism to live out. Because now we can have a population that we decide are subhuman, that we decide are less valuable to society, that we decide are worthy of exploitation. And so so we needed a racialized system in order to justify both morally and strategically, politically, the practice of slavery, because they ain't human. And so now if we can construct a racial other that then can be enslaved to build the American empire, that makes sense. And then once slavery ends, now we're doing it in prisons. Now we're doing it in all these other areas. Now we're doing it through low wage work. The exploitation of Black people hinges on the belief that Black folk ain't human. And the belief that Black folk ain't human hinges upon the construction of a racial system. And the construction of a racial system hinges on the need to have a state that exploits and defends class at all costs.
Okay. This is Critical Talk with Professor Al-Deen, talking back with Mark Lamonel. We're going to take a break for a minute or two, and we'll be right back.
Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah, let's explore.
I'm a little perturbed by and scared of at the same time what I see is happening. Another younger friend of mine wrote an article, Black is King, and it was meant to be uh, a test of, do we really know what we're doing? And can we even envision the backlash that's coming? Whether it's Beyonce with her, what is it, a video docu or whatever?
Yeah, visual album. Yeah.
Okay. And everybody's running after whatever dollars there are out there because now they're going to become sensitive to racism and still they're going to still practice it, but they're going to become sensitive to their practice. And then we got Black folk who, some of whom I've seen before, others of whom I can't quite see, but everybody's running after a way to capitalize off of a precious, devastating, heart-wrenching, murderous series of moments.
Yeah, whenever you have a tragedy like this, there will be people who will resist, people who will jump to action, but you will also have people who will try to co-opt the resistance, people who will exploit the resistance by making money off of it. Corporate America has never found a crisis that it didn't love to exploit. Black Lives Matter suddenly will become a hashtag and a T-shirt, and before you know it, it'll be unrecognizable. And that's just the way that symbols of resistance have always worked particularly within the capitalist society, right? They find ways to they co-opt the resistance, right? But then we also have to be wary of those people, because some of what I've just been talking about are systemic things, right? Like institutions and corporations are structured to do that, and people with liberal politics are kind of inclined to look at a radical movement through their own liberal lens. I get that, even if I disagree. But there's also some Negroes out there who are very intentional about presenting themselves as the leaders and the interpreters of a movement for their own benefit. Frantz Fanon talked
about that woman you were having a debate with. What's that woman's name? Oh my God. I almost heard her once and I wasn't sure. I was hearing what I was hearing and I turned it off real quick so I didn't want to get infected. What is wrong with her?
That's a good question. Some people say she's, just has the world wrong, right? That she has the wrong point of view, that she's been sort of converted by right-wing thought. Other people would say that she have more cynical analysis and say that she knows what she's doing, that she knows that as a Black person, she can attack Black movements and Black
and
get paid from it, right? Yeah. And so there are different schools of thought. I don't know, Candace. I don't like to speak to people's intentions or their heart. I just try to engage their ideas. Whether I think they're right or they're wrong is where I land. But I do think it's an important conversation to be had about what it means for folk in this moment to stand up and attack Black Lives Matter, to denounce George Floyd's the protests in the name of George Floyd, to act as if police violence and other forms of state violence aren't legitimate, aren't really happening. We have to be honest about that and challenge those people.
Well, I'm gonna give you, because you're the professor here, I'm the student.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, that's true. I want to know how we begin to strategize to keep them from squashing this, or to make us feel so worthless that we don't continue. How do we begin that strategy? Because I know we can't do it in 5 seconds, which means I might have to wake you up and have you back on here again. But how do we begin to strategize?
I think one, I think we have to begin with the radical imagination. We got to ask ourselves, what's our freedom dream? What does the end look like? What does justice look like?
Are you asking me to be Nina Simone, huh?
we,
Really?
look, we can use some Nina right now, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because I mean, because that's part of the problem, right? Is if I'm fighting and dreaming to fix a prison, and you're fighting and dreaming to destroy the prison, and this person's fighting and dreaming to send police who kill us to prison, and somebody else is fighting to stop police from killing us, and somebody else is fighting to get rid of police, then we ain't on the same page, even if we had the same protest. So we got to begin with articulating what we actually trying to do here. Then from there, I think we have to be mindful of the fact that sometimes having more people doesn't mean we have a stronger movement. You know, I'm not looking to have, you know, 1 million people in this movement. I'd rather have 500 who have absolute faith and who are willing to do the work. And so for me, that commitment to having strong coalitions that are locally rooted, right? If we're going to hold on to this dream, this can't be it can be an international movement, but it has to be local organizing and mass action. King used to say, when dogs bite us in Birmingham, we bleed everywhere. That means, and I'll tell you an example of this. In Minnesota, for the first time, and part of it was because of COVID, but when everything happened to George Floyd in Minnesota, first thing folks said is, don't come. How can you help? Don't come to Minnesota. We don't need a bunch of ambulance chasing Negroes with cameras coming to Minneapolis to do our movement.
Right.
You know what we need here. Unless you're a doctor, unless you can do something to help us in this moment,
right,
keep you behind in your city and organize there. And that kind of local action, local movement building, I think allows us to keep track of the real challenges, the real problems, and it stops us from turning every action, every movement, every crisis into a site of opportunism.
So if we're organizing locally, where is the hub going to be?
I like the idea of multiple hubs. You know, I think in the past we've looked for messianic leadership. We look for one person.
No, I don't want a messianic. No, Jesus and Muhammad were cool.
Right.
What I'm saying is, but
no, I know you're not saying that. But the problem is, people are saying, what's going to be the center of our activism?
But how do I know? Do I just call you and let you know in Philadelphia what I'm doing in Chicago?
And I think that's it. I think, especially in the age of social media, we say we connect with each other. And so we have movements in Minneapolis and in Chicago and Philadelphia. And when y'all have an action, you reach out to us. When we have an action, we reach out to you. When we have a need, or whether it's money, whether it's strategy, whether it's education, we connect with each other. And we don't have, because the problem is, if we create a single hub, right, right, they become the leader.
Yeah.
Right. And before you know it, you go from hub to leader to I'm the one here to save y'all. And that's, I'm trying to avoid that kind of a thrust.
I want to explore that some more the next time I wake you up and ask you to get on here. But I'm going to give you the last word. What do you want our audience to know?
I just want them to know that freedom is closer than we think. That we can win this fight, and that I have never been more certain than I am at this moment in history that we will be victorious in our struggle for justice. We still got a lot of work to do, but we're closer than we've ever been. And now is the moment to turn up, not to turn down. Now is the moment to say, wait a minute, we can get the prisons dismantled. We can defund these police. We can reimagine education. We can engage one another differently. We can boot out the leaders who have sold us out time and time again. We can do that right now. We are so close. The reason they keep giving stuff up, the reason they keep saying, okay, well, maybe we'll give you this. Okay, fine, we'll give you a body camera. Okay, fine, we'll fire this officer, is because they know that the stakes are high and that we're so close to winning. It's just like when you make a lawsuit, right? When you're about to win the $1 million they want to settle.
Yeah.
So don't settle. Don't settle. Justice is too close.
This is Professor Amina Al-Deen in Critical Talk. Had a wonderful 55 minutes with Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, and we will have him back as we explore some things. And for those of you who didn't get a chance to see the video at the beginning, please go and watch it. Critical Talk is a production of Muslim Network TV. Please go on our website. What will keep us alive is your donations. Thank you, Dr. Hill.
Thank you.